welcome everybody. We will make a start. We are recording the session, as Isabel just said, so if you don't want to be recorded, do turn off your cameras. I can see most are off. That's really good. If you can mute your microphones as well, that'd be really good. We are going to use the chat for questions and answers, so feel free to make use of the Teams chat on the side there, up on the menu buttons. And if we can, we'll answer the questions today. If there are any questions, particularly finance-related ones, we might struggle with. We don't have anybody from finance on the call today. We're all very technical, so we'll answer what we can. Anything else we'll follow up with on the blog post later when we share this recording. We can cover those there. So hit the right buttons. Here's what we are going to cover over the next just less than an hour. How we got here, the beta team and the plan we're working through, a bit of a walkthrough of the IMS product that we have at the moment, some conversations around private beta 1, and then we have some questions at the end that we'd like to ask you and hope to get your feedback on. We're going to be starting with Marcia for the first part of that, section 1, followed by Isabel for the beta team and plan. Isabel and Marcia are from DXW, who are our delivery partners on the project. The product walkthrough will be with me. I'm Richard, I'm from Barnsley Council, and then the private beta 1 part will be with Glenn from Dorset Council. We also have Tony from Huntingdonshire as a partner on the project, but he's not here with us today. He's away celebrating baby news, which is great, so congratulations to him. And at that point, I will hand over to Marcia.
Thanks, Richard. So yeah, I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of the background of the project for context. And if I could just echo the comment that Richard made about putting questions or queries into the chat, we'll collate them and probably answer them at the end. But the more we understand about what's attractive and what appears to be challenging, the better. So do fire them in. On the next slide, please, Richard. So in 2017, when faced with the prospect of renewing a license for their incumbent income management system for yet another 3 years, Barnsley Council decided to develop an in-house system instead. And they and their housing management agents have been running it successfully on the platform since 2018. But they did recognise that their IMS might be reusable by other councils, and there were obvious benefits to that. So DLUHC, which I haven't quite got used to saying yet, previously MHCLG, provided funding for a discovery project to identify whether and how the Barnsley IMS could be made available for other councils. And that led to the discovery. So on the next slide, we've got a little bit about the discovery. So the discovery was completed in January 2020. There were 18 different organisations that took part in that research. It spanned 3 sprints over 7 weeks. And it led to the vision for an alpha, which was to establish a sustainable model for sharing and maintaining and governing the IMS with other councils, outlining clear costs and support services for the IMS in line with other councils' expectations. Now on the next slide. As part of the discovery, the team defined what was pushing councils to consider an alternative model and the pool that would be for a shared IMS. And the push was that there was, or there is still currently, long contracts and potentially poor customer service and a loss of trust in the system. Those were the main factors. They were pushing people to look for alternative solutions. And the pull for a shared IMS was that you could have better terms, a better product, and time-saving features, encouraging people to try something new. And we moved forward into Alpha. So Alpha was a collaboration between Barnsley, Huntingdonshire and Dorset. It was 4 sprints long and completed in August 2020. And what they achieved, they mapped the landscape and the wider service ecosystem. They created the council personas for future users, and they prototyped new features for the new system. They referenced architecture and infrastructure for the system also, and they defined an approach for service governance. And they created the first iteration of a proposition for a support model. At the end of the alpha, they decided to approach the beta in 2 parts. And I'm just going to hand over to Isabel now, who's going to tell you about where we are now with the beta.
Thanks, Marcia. And just to also introduce Joseph, who's on the call, he's part of the DXW team and supporting with the technical aspects. And so after a pause between August last year and July this year, the three councils came back together, and Tony, who's not with us today, refers to that as bringing the band back together, which is always quite exciting for us. But in between that gap, we did do some work to secure the funding with DLU HC, and then we kicked off the beta, and we, even though we'd had a break, it was quite like sort of easy to recall the work we'd done and make a start. And we began with a series of workshops to look back at the alpha and discovery that Marcia has sort of mentioned, and consider our roadmap for what we're going to do in beta. And it's again important to mention, as Marcia just said, that at the end of alpha we decided to approach the beta in two parts. We had considered it as one, but we broke it up into two parts. So the first part, private beta 1, is our open source model, and the second part, which would come after that, is a supported model, which would be a private beta 2. So on to the next slide. Thank you. So we reflected back on our previous visions for the project, and we've reframed this for beta. And our beta vision for the first private beta specifically is to build a free, reusable and open source income management system for the public good that's easy and affordable to maintain and enhance. And this vision retains the important things that we have identified in previous phases of the project. And we also have a refreshed set of goals for the beta phase, and this is the first, to build a community of IMS users, which hopefully today is a start of. And the second is to evolve the code use with contributors and consumers. The third goal is to design a governance model that works, and that's work we started in alpha and continue in beta. And the fourth is a strong and funded proposition for continued development. So our beta phase has 5 main work streams shown on this slide, and we recently kind of iterated how our team was working, so team members take responsibility and sort of lead for one of these areas each. And on the next slide, we have our high-level plan, and not to worry if you can't see the detail in this, but just to mention that it sort of runs from July, when we started, through to January next year, and it covers private beta 1, the open source model. We've separated it into 4 phases, and between each phase we've scheduled a pause to reflect and replan as a team. And we've just had our first of these pauses and found it really valuable to think about our direction and make some adjustments as well. And so where we are now, we've reached our second phase, covering sprints 4 and 5, and the focus is to identify our first users and progress product development to meet the needs of these users. And our current sprint 5, is from the 1st to the 14th of October, and the key things we're doing are developing guidance and documentation to go alongside the IMS, setting up a demo site, engaging with future users, and crucially sort of identifying private beta participants. It's sort of essential at this stage that we do that. So we're sort of hoping to encourage as many people to get involved from now on. And also early engagement with potential suppliers for our second private beta, which we'll need to think about soon. And now I'm going to hand to Richard.
Thank you. So we're going to do a little bit of a product walkthrough of what we got so far. I need to caveat this. It's not a live demo. It's slides again, so apologies for that. But there's a couple of good reasons for that. Mainly that the live system we are using in Barnsley right now that we hope to share is full of live data. And obviously we don't want to be sharing that on a recorded public session. And our test system is actively being worked on, hard and fast, so it'll be up and down and all over the place. So I didn't want to risk running a live demo against that and it falling over in the middle. So we've taken, I've taken a few screenshots. I say we, Dan, who's on the call, is our technical lead developer. He's taken some screenshots for me, so I'm going to try and do justice to them as we go through this now. So some of the screenshots in here are not de-Barnsleyfied, but we do have a de-Barnsleyfied version of the system. This is what the beta has already delivered so far in terms of code cutting and technical work. So what we had originally was the IMS that Barnsley was using, and we've taken a copy of that, created the local gov IMS, if you like, as a second copy. We've de-Barnsleyfied that, removed all the code secrets, removed all the references to Barnsley in there. And sort of made it more generic in terms of config, so there's nothing tied to our infrastructure or environment. We've made some UI improvements across the piece as we've been doing that. We've removed the authentication links to our Azure Active Directory, which obviously makes sense if other councils are going to use it. They can't be tied to our Active Directory, so it now accepts other authentication methods as well and models. We've introduced 2 of the missing features that we identified in alpha. There were 4 things in total. There was processing rules and import exports, which are on there. There was the ability to capture ATP payments, which we're having conversations with gov.uk pay around those. We understand they may be on their roadmap, so we may not need to develop that aspect of it. And then the 4th one, which has just fallen out of my brain as I've started talking. What was the 4th one?
Credit card payments.
Chip and pin, thank you very much. Chip and pin card payments, which is the next one we want to look at working on. So we've got processing rules in there, we've got import, export. Now, during the discovery and the alpha in particular, when we looked at import, export functionality, that was about being able to import files from banks, bailiffs, anywhere where income transactions are recorded and sent into an authority. And being able to configure those on a schedule, pick them up from certain locations, bring them in, export them out to back office systems and whatnot. Now, we originally started looking at that as being something that finance teams would want to control on their own without having to rely on IT or developers to do it. But the conversations we had during Alpha said, actually, no, that's not a finance role. We'd want our technical teams to do that, and we'd rely on them to do it. Speaking to those technical teams, they then told us that they wouldn't want an interface in the system for that. They'd rather control it themselves through APIs and their own technical scripting and sort of tools. So we focused the import-export functionality around the API because that met the need best. So just to cover that off, because you'll see that in a moment. So the key features that are in there that I'll just walk through, we've got the main screen in the IMS, which is the list of all the transactions coming in and the transaction details that sit behind them. Being able to issue receipts via email or printed, which are full VAT receipts. Being able to issue full and partial refunds, splitting and transferring money between different accounts or journaling them, as our finance team call it. Taking manual payments, processing cash and check payments, which is kind of like your end of day cashing up your till and recording what's been taken. Suspense items, which is where any transactions fall if the processing rules don't cover them. So the IMS doesn't know what to do with them or where to send the money, which accounts to process it into. And then there's a little bit around the admin and configuration screens, but I'll sort of gloss over that bit because it's kind of what you'd expect. So we have a deck. Let me jump across to that. So hopefully you can see a mock-up of the screen. So as I said, the Barnsley logos and what have you won't be on this when we publish the actual code base later on this month, we're hoping. But this is the generic screen that captures all of the transactions, so you can see everything coming into the system. We've got a whole bunch of filters and different ways that you can interrogate this information, whether you're looking for things in different fund types, things paid in different ways, that's method of payments, MOP. So if you're just looking for card payments or check payments, you can filter out that way. If you're looking for payments between particular dates, sent to particular account numbers, you have a receipt number from a call, maybe a customer's phoned in and they're asking you about a transaction, all sorts of different options you've got there to filter transactions down. When you're looking at the detail, of any particular transaction, this is the screen that you see. So we can see here that this payment came in on the 27th. It was for £1. There was no VAT associated with that. Here we have the PSP reference, which in Barnes' case is, we use Barclaycard Smart Pay, but it could just as easily be gov.uk Pay or any other PSP. This method of payment was a Smart Pay self-service card. That's what we call our self-service card payments, but those are completely configurable and you can call them and set up whichever methods of payment you need. And we've got the customer's address tracked in here, which suggests this one was actually paid on our website via self-service card. It was for pest control. It was sent to this pest control account number, and it was for £1. So that's clearly a test transaction, because I don't think any pest control services only cost £1. But the interesting thing around this then, so you've got the print receipt button up here, the email receipt button, and the ability to refund. And alongside the transaction, we've got this journal button as well. So I'll just show you through the screens of how each of those work. The idea behind this, by the way, is just to show the system, show that there is something there, it does exist, we are going to release something, and to show how easy it is to use compared to what you might be used to using, certainly much easier than what we were used to using before. And just to say down the left-hand side here as well, that's as intuitive a menu as we could make, really. If you want to look at the transactions, you click transactions. If you want to transfer money between accounts, there's a transfer button. If you want to take a payment, there's a payment button. The two that probably need a little bit of explanation, e-returns is cash and check processing. We call it e-returns because that's what our users were used to in the previous system, but it's just cash and check. We can probably change that label back now, to be honest. It's been in for a couple of years. And suspense is, as I said earlier, where things fall and need some manual intervention because the system doesn't yet know where to put them. And then you've got the usual users and settings. If I wanted to email a receipt for this transaction, it's just a question of capturing an email address and hitting send, and out that goes. Or if I hit the print button, this is what we get, a full VAT receipt showing everything that's relevant. It's the same screen that is either printed to a printer or appears in your email box when that email goes out. So that's what you get, nice and simple. If you wanted to refund the transaction, depending on your role within the system, you can either have permission to do a full refund or partial refunds as well. In this case, we can see that from the original amount of £1 paid, we've got £1 left to refund. If we were just to refund 50p at this point, maybe whatever that pest control service was didn't work properly, obviously there'd then be another 50p to refund at a later date if we wanted to. So you can do full or partial at that point, which is why I asked for an amount. And that just goes back to the whatever method of payment paid it in the first place. If you wanted to journal, which is the button at the side there, when the money comes in and drops into a particular account, if you want to journal that out to other places, you can do that to many places if you like. So in this case, we've just got a demonstration that we're journaling from the £1 two 50p's out to two different places, and it's telling us at the top there's nothing left. We can't add any more rows because there's nothing more of the £1 left. We're moving that into a postage account with that account number, and then the other 50p into another postage account with that account number. You'll see postage accounts all through this demo because there's no account reference validation on them, so it's much easier for us to do that with a demo than try and find a council tax account and actually have to have a valid account reference. Now, once that journal's done, or the refund's done, whichever way the transaction goes, you start to see an audit history back on the transaction screen. So in this case, we can see that original £1 that came in. We can see that there've been no refunds issued. We didn't process one, but we can see that two 50p's have been journaled off to somewhere else. And if I click on the items here, we get to jump to their individual transaction screen. So you can see the detail of them as a standalone transaction. Transfers over on the left. So this is similar to journals, but you're not starting from a transaction, from a specific income line. You can transfer from many sources to many destinations, many targets in this case. And if I jump across the screen, here's an example. So we're pulling £5 from this postage account. I said you'd see a lot of postage accounts, and £3 from this postage account. And we're just setting up the targets here to say we want to put £5 in this other postage account with a different number, and there's £3 of the 8 left to allocate, so it's expecting another row or another 2 or 3 rows before we can complete that transfer. And then that'll just shufty the money around where we need it. In the case of taking individual payments, there's a few different ways to process these. On this screen, you can see we've started capturing a couple of payments, a £5 and a £10 from SmartPay staff cards to be able to process those. And you've got all the sort of capture screens on the capture fields on the left here. The buttons up top are what are important. If we wanted, in this scenario, to pay that £15 via the Moto interface, so the telephone interface, that will basically fire up the Moto screen, so you can do that. If you want to just log that these have been received as checks, you can hit the check button and it'll log them as transactions in the IMS as check payments, or you can simply post them through and get the transactions logged that way. So there's a number of different scenarios. If you are in the Moto world, obviously PCI DSS applies, and there's sort of outside mechanisms to look at around that, but the interface there allows you to capture those payments manually. So e-returns, as I said earlier, is around cash and check. This is where we can cash up tills at the end of a day. So you notice down in this column here, we've got different template types. Now, templates can be configured in the IMS, and what this basically allows you to do is, if, for example, as that one says, museums template, we've prefixed them all with Z, don't ask me why. The museums template will essentially be a list of stock. So at the end of the day, we can say that we have sold 15 maps. We've maybe sold a bag of flour. We have a working mill in Barnsley. We've maybe sold some pencils or pen toppers, things like that from our museum, some merchandise. And the template will allow people in the museums to say, these are all the items we've sold. And then they can say, this is how many £20 notes we had in our till. This is how many £10 notes we had in our till. And in theory, the numbers will match up. The other template here, the admin demo one, this is designed for our FM team, and this is where they might sell franking services, they might sell biro, we have to pay for biros in Barnsley, they might sell those, and they can keep a track of different items, different stock if you like, different services. So this is what it looks like to create one of those at the end of the day. I say at the end of the day, you could be building this up through the day and keep saving it as a draft and then submit it at the end of the day when you cash the till up. So you can use it as a sort of an audit of what's been sold. On this admin template, the museums one might have been better, but we've gone with the admin one. You can see there have been £100 of phone calls that have been sort of charged. We've maybe done £100 worth of postage services that we need to charge for. Ultimately, £277.15 worth of business. And when we've cashed up the till, on this side, we've got 50 £50 notes and 20 £20 notes. Sorry, £50 of £50 notes and £20 of £20 notes, which adds up to £70. Obviously, those two don't balance. When they do balance, when it's all the cashing up's been done, they turn green, and then you get this submit button, which is beyond the save draft. Until they balance, you can only save as a draft. This is where you edit those templates. It's just to show that that's possible. So this is where our admin team sort of say, these are the things we sell, and this is what VAT codes we want to apply the different items to and the different references we want to give them. So you can build those up and customize them. And then once a bunch of e-returns have been submitted in the system, when the cash is physically banked, however that might be, we send ours off via Securicore. When it eventually comes back, our finance team can reconcile that and then approve the e-returns en masse to say, this is what you said had gone to the bank based on these sales. This is what actually arrived back from the bank. They match, we'll approve those. If they don't match, obviously there's a finance process can kick in then to see why. So you've got the bulk option of approving many of those at once. So this is a new feature from beta. This is the processing rules screen, which is quite nice to see taking shape now after the alpha work we did designing it. We did some mock-ups in Miro and tested those with users. So it's starting to come to life now. This is where for every transaction that comes into the system, you can essentially set up rules. And this is an example of us doing that. If I just zoom in a little bit here, we can see that when money arrives we're looking for the conditions. If an account reference equals that value and the payment amount ends in a 2, obviously that's just to show how flexible this is. That's not really a very likely scenario. Or they're paying with a fund code that ends in 22, then you can set up actions. We want to transfer that money to fund code 23 and assign it to that account reference. Here we can see what that looks like a bit more wider. So we've got currently a disabled rule with an enable button up here. So you've got the ability to build these and test them before you actually switch them on, where you can set up your rules, add as many as you like, add conditions and edit conditions, and then set your actions and add those. As you're adding a rule, this is the kind of simple way that's done. So we're looking for an account reference that must equal that number. You've got greater than, less than operators, different fields you can play with to set those rules up. Anything that doesn't hit one of those rules will fall into suspense, I mentioned before. The idea behind this is if, let's say, I don't know, we get a council tax payment come in and the reference number is Mr. Smith's council tax rather than an actual account number, it's going to fall into suspense. Our finance team are then going to look at that, do some manual intervention, figure out where that transaction money should be going, and then either tick the box and journal it off to whichever account they know it needs to go to. This is perhaps a one-off transaction, we don't need to worry about it. They might decide to call the customer and say, actually, can you change the reference that you're sending payments to us with because we're not able to automatically allocate it to your account? That's another option. Or they could, if maybe Mr. Smith is sending a proper account number, but he's perhaps transposed the digit or he's missed the last digit off, we could set up an import rule that says, if you've got it coming from this person's account number and it's got this council tax account reference in it, just change it to this and then process it through. And then the next time that comes, we'll not see it in suspense. So the idea is to use those import rules to reduce the suspense items and reduce the amount of manual intervention that's needed. Few screens here around user management. This is all pretty standard stuff. List of all the users and whether they're enabled or disabled. You can configure all the different roles and fund groups and e-return templates that they've got access to, if any. You can, you notice that we've got expiry days. So if this user doesn't log on for 90 days, their account gets disabled. All kinds of sort of standard function that you'd expect. This is just a screen showing how we assign their roles. So you'll notice the different roles we've configured here. At the bottom there, we've got ability to issue partial refunds or full refunds. This person has neither of those, but you can configure to quite a granular level is the point. And then this is the general settings screen, just showing that you can configure your own methods of payment, fund groups, roles, e-return templates, back codes, fund codes, and system messages we use when we're doing, so if we're going to have downtime or anything like that, just puts a message at the top of the screen for all the users. And then I mentioned earlier on the imports exports piece that the advice was technical people would more than likely be setting up new imports and exports between systems, whether that be an export out to council tax or an import of references back in or import of a bank file. And so we've put a lot of work into a pretty solid API around the system. And these two slides here just sort of show the breadth and depth of that API at the moment. So all this will be shared when the video goes out. So I'll just flick back to the deck. It's a quick sort of whistle-stop walkthrough in the time we've got available. Next up for the application is that we're going to get the code base published out to GitHub. It is there already, but it's in a private repository. We're just checking a few things out before we hit the public button. So we just want to make sure it's absolutely right before we do that. Next big step then is for us to use that code base to create a demo site, get it up and running so that everybody can get access to it and sort of have a look around, and we can do some demos of its functionality real rather than slides. So that's another reason I've used slides today, because that isn't quite ready yet. We're hoping to have that ready towards the end of the month, all being well. Then we look at documentation, user manuals and guides for how to actually use the thing. We're considering YouTube videos, but we're conscious if this goes out as open source code, it could change quite quickly. and it's going to be quite difficult to keep the videos up to date. So there's might be a bit of an industry in that, so we'll have a think about it. But also developer guidance as well, developer documentation that we'll publish to the GitHub repository to sort of explain how things set up and how people can get involved and change the code if they want to. And then that fourth missing feature, chip and pin payments, I've got an action on my list to order some terminals so that we can start to look at integrations and setting that functionality up. And then any requirements coming out of partner councils starting to work with us, we'll jump onto those too. So at that point, I will hand back to Glenn for Private Beta 1.
Thanks, Richard. And yeah, just a reminder, I'm Glenn from Dorset Council, and we've been working with the project team on the beta. We was working in alpha as well. So one of the things that we were really keen to do is work out how this becomes real. So how does this stop being a project that we're all working on in isolation and getting all these lovely features developed and getting everything together, and how do we move across the line and start building that community, start building that user base, which, as you can tell, is the some of the goals that we had in beta as well. So that is something that we really wanted to focus on, and we purposely didn't use the term customer because we really see this as a community effort. It's building the community, building the user base. We are building the product for the greater good, for the good of the community. So that's what we're doing. So. And then, as Isabel mentioned earlier, we had a pause recently, and our plan for beta was very much to look at this in a sequenced way, where we release the code. So there's the open source model, where people can take that code, they can bring it into their own landscape, and spin up their own implementation and start using it. And then beta 2 was very much going to be about the supported model, where we start looking at getting partners involved, where people can take that code source and start managing it on behalf of organizations. But in that pause and through the first part of beta, we got the feedback from you guys that suggested that wasn't necessarily going to be how it was going to work, and we needed to realign that. We needed to be flexible to whatever needs there was. So just on the next slide, we looked at the two options there, and like I said previously, we were going to be looking at this very sequentially, that there's the open source version and then we'll move into the managed service. But in talking to people, it became clear that in order for us to reach and achieve our beta goal of building the community and building our user base, we might need to be flexible as to the needs of those people that want to engage with us. So if it's the managed service, at this point, it wouldn't necessarily be a partner company that would be helping us with that support service. It would potentially be the project team, and then we can build on how that works over time. And then if there's an organization that does have that digital capability, and they can take the code source and run it themselves, then that option is available as well. As Rich said, we are going to be looking to release that code as soon as we can. So that's pretty much what we took from our pause of, yes, we need to think a little bit more flexibly and less sequentially. And so then we started thinking, well, how does that actually manifest itself? How does that work? And we looked at the point that people and what we learned from Alpha as well, where people have and organizations have long-standing contracts in place, and the contracts may not be expiring, or and in which case there could be a delay until that point, but then they need to quickly jump over, and then there's a hard and fast cutover from system A, IMS A to IMS B, and we wanted to soften that hard and fast cutover. So we started looking at how we can do that. So the next slide starts looking at, well, if we start looking at deploying iteratively, it doesn't necessarily need to be that hard and fast cutover. It doesn't need to be that big bang of on the Friday you're using income management system A, and then on the Monday you're using income management system B. It could be much more of a transition, and that's what I think we're hoping is a as a project will help allay some fears if people are a little bit tentative or there are concerns about moving into this. Actually, we could soften that cutover. So looking at an iterative deployment and thinking about maybe integrating just one service at a time. So the three things there that I've mentioned, hopefully that minimizes disruption. It enables us as a project to learn as well. So as we are implementing services, we can learn and reflect and react as well and change the way we do things if we need to. So enabling us to fine tune the deployment process. And then it builds confidence with you as users, with us as a project team. And as I say, as we start building that community, build confidence in the community as a whole. So then we started thinking, how can that work really? So you might have service A that's coming through your current IMS, and then that feeds into your finance system. What we're thinking a model could be is actually service A we reroute into the local gov IMS. That could be something like the bailiff's feed, or it could be licenses payments if it's coming from a line of business application or something. And so to disrupt the whole end-to-end process as little as possible, that could then, one of the exports that we've been talking about coming out of the local gov IMS, that could then just feed into your current IMS and then continue along the same journey. Hopefully that sort of minimizes that disruption as we're talking about. But as confidence builds and as we start thinking about cutting over a little bit more, what we can then start thinking about is, okay, well, let's take that service A that's already going into the local gov IMS, but then let's feed that into the finance system directly. And again, as we talked about, as confidence then builds, then we can potentially add in service B as well and continue. So what that hopefully is presents a little bit of a softer adoption. It avoids that big bang and that hard cutover of using system A and then moving over to system B, and hopefully allows us to fine tune and improve any kind of deployment processes that we need to. So from that, we have a few questions for you. And as we said, if you could use the comments, the messaging comments chat to add in any answers, and I'll ask Isabel and Marcia to take a look at those and to monitor those and come back with any feedback. So the first question we have is: are you attracted to participating in the IMS private beta 1? So has the demo that Rich has given, and hopefully the idea that the project team can support you and we can try and minimize disruption, and it's not necessarily reliant on contracts coming to an end. Does that attract you in participating in IMS Beta 1? If we could have a yes or a no, please. That would be good. Anything coming through yet?
It looks like people are typing.
Okay, I'm being too impatient, sorry.
Yasser Mohammed from Bradford has said yes, depending on when that would be. And Jack has said yes. Mike Connell has said if we can separate out a single service from a single payment provider. I think that means a yes, if you can do that. And he's typing at the moment.
Okay, that's positive. So Mike, we can come back to any specifics you want to talk about there. Testables for GovPay, for garden subscriptions. Okay, so I'm guessing you're not currently using gov.uk Pay at the moment, and this would be a way to start implementing that. And if fair enough. Okay, so yeah, I mean that's a good thing. So I've concentrated on the fact that we could single out a specific service to reroute that through local gov IMS. So everything else carries on with your existing throughput, but one service come through that. And yeah, you're right. We could actually then facilitate the GovPay for providing the mechanism for taking that payment. So facilitating that payment. So yeah, good idea. hang off question 2 for the moment while people are typing.
Do we know where Jack is from?
So that I think that's probably
Southwark Council.
Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, good point, Mike. So Mike's just put that it'd be great to do that because it'd also show the link between the IMSs to prove the transition will work. I think that's what we're trying to, like I say, when we're saying minimize disruption, yes, it doesn't mean a big bang, but it's also trying to build that confidence that yes, you can see actually something real going through local gov IMS to try and minimize that, build that confidence and minimize that disruption. Okay, should we move on to question 2, conscious of time as well. So question 2, are you concerned about participating in the IMS private beta 1? There's an obvious follow-up question there. So if you are, yeah, maybe enter what the concern is. No, bring it on. We like you, Mike. You're our favourite so far. Just don't tell anyone else. So Yasser, you've mentioned would require a bit more detail regarding what would be involved, but at this moment there isn't anything to be concerned about. Yeah, no, I completely appreciate that, and I think that's where us as a project team are thinking that, you know, we really need to be there to support you guys to help you along that adoption and moving across. Okay, thanks, Jack. So you're saying that a massive shift in hearts and minds to convince them. Yeah, and if we can help with that in any way, then please do let us know. We're keen to learn where we can support that. And I think you know, and we don't want to start talking to sales speak, but you know, there's no obligation here. So it could be you try one service, and if it doesn't work for you, then you know, there's nothing lost there. So I think that's what we're trying to say. There doesn't have to be, you know, a hard and fast cut over, and once you've moved across, then there's no going back. I think, you know, if we can support you in trying a proof of concept with a single service, or as we've said earlier, it could be a single payment method, payment time. Then yeah, we can try and help with that. Sam, you've mentioned that you're interested but need further thought and discussion. Currently tied into a long contract. Yeah, that's something we have heard a lot. Yeah, if you want to discuss it more, if we can help, if we can provide more demos, then yeah, do let us know. And Jack, you're up for helping with the change. Yes, I mean, one of those things is disrupting the current model. You know, just giving that extra option, make that extra option available. Isabel, there's a couple more in there. Marcia, do you want to cover off some of those?
Yeah, and Charles has mentioned that he's really attracted to the model of working in the system personally, but they've got a large incumbent providing the IMS. So just wonder what procurement issues there might be around replacing it. Charles is from Devon. Maybe down to the procurement timeframe or the contract end timeframe.
It's true, yeah, and we, you know, again, if we need to have discussions with procurement teams and things to work out what is compliant and what we're able to do, then yeah, if we can help, then please do let us know.
That's a good point. And then Stephen Blackburn from Leeds Hi, Stephen. Said that there is a review of existing financial management system taking place. He's going to find out what the status of that is, and he'll let us know. But if we could share the recording and the slides, that'd be probably helpful for his conversation.
Yeah,
we'll publish them on the blog at localgovims.digital, which is a very catchy URL. We could have gone with something a little clearer, I think.
Thanks, Richard. Richard, Yasser from Bradford was just saying that he noticed there was no mention of reports in the demo. Will that be a feature in the new system?
Let me confirm and come back to you. Yeah, it's there are reports in there, but I'm not up to speed on them. So let me take that away, and we'll reflect on that in the blog post when we share the video. Make sure that's covered off.
Okay, should we move on to the next question? So the next question is around what's essential for the IMS to do. So what is it essential the IMS does for your organisation to use it? IMS as a beta or as IMS as a full product, Mike asks. Richard, do you want to cover that one?
I guess the question there is more about the functionality of the IMS. So if you were to, I don't know, let's say you switched whole school from your existing IMS to this new one, is there anything in particular that you would want to make sure isn't missing? I think is what the question's asking there. So the approach Glenn's talked about with one service at a time is sort of how we do it. But thinking of, the whole thing's finished, we've done every service and we've gone right across. You've left your current system and you moved over to this one. Is there anything that if it were missing would be a real problem?
I'm thinking about that. I suppose it could be as part of the beta or the full product as well, isn't it? So if there was something that is not there now that stopped you saying, yes, we would try that single service approach, then, that I think that's just as valuable to us as in the full system. So if there's something that you say, well, actually, we would do licenses or whatever it might be, however, it doesn't do X, then I think, like I say, that gives us really good feedback and insight that we then need to look at. Okay. Thanks, Yasser. Just going through your answer.
Stuart has said export import to a system that isn't necessarily API compatible.
Okay. We'd be thinking about some kind of capability within the IMS that could pick up an output file from that other system or place down a file for that to import if it's not API capable. So some kind of, I guess, ETL tool, some kind of, ETL tool, really. Okay, that's good for us to know. Thank you.
Taking payments by phone and then also the reports again.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think, Richard, if you could sort of confirm those reporting capabilities of the system, I think that'd be useful. And then obviously if there's anything missing there, then we can certainly receive feedback on that.
It would be great, Yasser, if we could trouble you for a list of the sorts of reports you use. Obviously not like right into the detail, but the general gist of what's important to you on reporting. That would be really good, because then we can have a look at, you know, what we do have covered, what we don't have covered, and that'll give us a bit of a steer for where we might want to plug some gaps. If that's doable, that would be great. I mean, I can certainly share what we have got at the moment.
Yeah, so Stuart's just saying he's thinking about taking, let's just scroll up a little bit, taking in from, say, Civica Open Revs or export to Unit 4. Yes, I think that goes along with what Rich was saying, that, you know, potentially need to look at other means of flat files and what have you. So yeah, that's useful. Thank you.
Sam saying chip and pins and 70+ payment devices. So that's the next big feature we're going to be looking at. ATP, yeah, we're having those conversations with gov.uk pay to sort of figure out where that fits between the two of us. Hopefully all with them, but we'll see, because that'd save us a lot of effort. But we'd obviously need to integrate rightly with it. And then reporting, yeah, we've got a big piece to do on reporting, I think, there off the back of this. And the payment links is a good one. I know that's something that gov.uk pay do at the moment. So that's a good one for us to pick up after this. I'll speak to Dan about that one afterwards.
I think Mike's mentioned about integrating with any RPA as well. So that's a good point. Sort of following on from the applications that are not API compliant. So yeah, having that kind of open architecture to mean that an RPA process can feed in or out of that. Yeah, that's useful. And you're right, yeah, this is about integration and open access to IMS data and functions. So yeah, I think that's...
Yeah, we want to be as open with the API as we possibly can be. It really full function, isn't it?
And not charge that earth for it, which I'm sure we've all been there, haven't we, and had the same conversations.
Oh, Dan's answering about the payment links in the chat. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Like I say, conscious of time. So the next thing is how we can support you more. So how can we support you to spark conversation about IMS with colleagues, whether that's with senior leadership, whether that's finance colleagues, whether that's digital colleagues, transformation and change, whatever it might be. How can we help? How can we help with those conversations?
It feels like we do well to think about the whole change management piece from start to finish, doesn't it? And the answers we get to this question will feed in up front to that as to how we start to introduce the thing and then how we support that change through. With Jack's help. I'm clinging on to the fact that Jack said he'd help, so with Jack's help. You said it now, it's recorded.
Is Jack our new favourite then? Sorry, Mike.
Only if I come through with that offer to help.
So Mike has said about the affordability of it. So expecting questions about what might be saved as a result. So
yeah, we did a lot of research around that during the discovery phase, looking at sort of what councils were investing in IMSs at the minute, the size of the spend overall nationwide, and likely costs for this kind of system, open source and with a support provider. So it might be good for us to do some work around bringing that information into some kind of, not marketing campaign, but some kind of clear literature maybe.
Yeah, Jack's just mentioned the first question is always, well, who else is using this? Can we speak to them? Yeah, it's a good point. Barnsley's the first ones, I suppose. But yeah, and that is why beta is very much about building the community, building the user base, And we've taken a lead from. We've been speaking to Will at the Drupal project, and very much how they've worked on word of mouth and reputation. So we understand that is something that we really need to help, and which is why we're trying to make it as an easy as transition as possible. Like I say, if it's a case of just introduce one service into it, just to build that confidence, and then try and transition to it.
Yeah, and then Charles, your question about the demo and that sort of been the first step to give demos to income teams. That's why we're sort of targeting getting a demo system up and running, getting the code base published, and then we've got something that we can use with some real test data, and we can sit and spend time clicking through functions and really getting into this is how you would do this is how you would do that, and working through scenarios with income teams, so they can sort of be hands-on with it, if you like. So that'd be good. And Yas is saying similar. Yeah.
Okay, that's been really useful. So thanks everyone for your inputs and engaging with those questions. Really conscious of time. Got 1 minute, and I'm sure there's school runs that need to be had and what have you. So shall I pass back to you, Richard?
Yeah, I guess really just to say thank you for that. For your comments and your input, that's brilliant. We have an email address which we haven't put on the slide here, but it's just hello@localgovims.digital, and we have the website, which is localgovims.digital as well. If you think of anything after the event, after the show and tell, please do email us, or we have Local GovIMS on Twitter now as well that we're starting to use just to promote these events and what we're doing and update everybody, so you can engage with that as well. That'd be fantastic. The more input we get, the more we shape what we're doing, and the more people who want to join in and help, the better. So it's really just an open call for everybody to get involved. It'd be fantastic. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you at the next one, if not in between.
Thank you, Richard. Can I just check I've typed that email address into the chat correctly? hello@localgovims.digital.
That's it, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
There's lots of comments. I'll wait for the comments and share them.
So it's 15:01. I'm going to jump on the school run, and then I'll try and catch up with you guys again after that.
Thanks, Richard.
Right up to the wire.
Cheers.
See you later.
Bye. Don't think I'm able to stop the recording.
Oh. Do you think it just stops when we all leave?
Okay, in which case, thanks everybody.
Okay.
See you next time.